Since 1977, according to a review of the Bureau of Labor Statistics by NBC, college textbook prices have increased by over 1,000%. To give you perspective, the overall inflation rate for the United States over the same amount of time is slightly over 300%. The cost of textbooks has risen at over triple the rate of U.S. inflation. That's absolutely insane. Students and parents shouldn't have to deal with such drastic price increases for textbooks. The books should be free. I've been in college for 5 years and have paid for my textbooks during that time. I've seen my friends unable to afford the required books for their classes. I've been enrolled in classes where the textbook was so essential, but due to the cost, I was unable to afford it. Students shouldn't have to deal with any of that stress. By the end of this speech, you'll see why textbooks should be free. To persuade you, I will talk about how providing them is beneficial to universities, students, and our society. I'll start with how it will benefit the schools. In 2014, USA Today reported that, in a nationwide survey of over 2,000 students from 150 schools, 65% of them said that they didn't buy a textbook because it was too expensive. 48% said the high cost of books impacted the amount of and which classes they took. And 98% of the students that opted out of buying the book admitted they were scared that it would affect their grades. It doesn't reflect well on the universities if their students can't afford to have the materials needed to learn and do worse in classes because of it. In 2015, at the Illinois State University, Ryan Powers, the student body president, and Dane Ward, the dean of Milner Library, took notice of this issue and formed a proposal that, when passed, would mean free textbooks for every student at the school. A different proposal was passed that same year that reduced the cost of textbooks for students. Although they weren't yet provided for free, the reduced cost showed a positive effect. An online editorial for ISU stated how it's been recognized for increased enrollment and high graduation rates. Imagine what could happen if the books were entirely free. Due to increased enrollment, grades, and graduation rates, schools would look great. Outsiders and prospective students would see that the school values their success and their education. Providing free textbooks would be nothing but a benefit for the school. Yes, textbooks at no cost would benefit universities, but even more so they would benefit the students themselves. As touched upon previously, free textbooks means better grades. Every student would have access to the required material, greatly increasing their chance to succeed. The 65% of students that didn't buy a book because of cost now have what they need. Not only that, it would obviously lessen the stress on students' bank accounts. According to the Statistic Brain Research Institute, with data from the National Association of College Stores, as of 2015, the average student spending for one semester of materials is $509, meaning over $1,000 per year. If the books were free, that money can be used for other bills, potentially reducing the amount of financial aid and loans they need. When I spent my 4 years at Bloomsburg University, I lived in an apartment for 3 of them. I had many expenses I needed to account for, and I spent over $1,000 per year on books. I could have used that money to pay for my groceries, rent, and electricity. These $2 alone could have paid for 3 weeks of groceries. And that's not even mentioning my growing loans, and I'm sure many of you can relate to that. It's crazy how much of a difference it could make if students didn't have to worry about the cost of books. I've talked about the obvious beneficiaries of free textbooks, but what else could be positively affected by them? Our society. Our financial hardship is no secret. The fact is, costs for everything are rising. Everybody always talks about how important it is to get a good education, job, and make a lot of money. But it seems that's getting much harder to do. Don't we want a highly educated society? In a student public interest research group report by Ethan Sinak and Robert Donahue, it states that in order to afford in-state tuition at a public school, a student would need to work 991 hours at a minimum wage job. That's a 40-hour-a-week full-time job for half a year. Adding the average cost of room and board, even working a full-time job year-round would leave the student at a deficit. Textbooks unnecessarily add to that deficit. The same report says this: the shock of tuition and room and board cause many students to opt out of enrolling entirely. In a recent study of non-college going students by the McKinsey Center for Government, 48% of them cited an inability to pay as the reason for not attending. Insanely steep textbook costs only intensify the problem. Isn't our goal to send our kids to college to get a good education? If providing free textbooks helps just a little bit with this problem, shouldn't we be doing that? To conclude, students should be provided with free textbooks because there are many benefits that come along with it. The universities providing the textbooks, the students receiving them, and a society that pushes for high education all benefit from schools making textbooks free. It's an absolute shame how unnecessarily expensive textbooks are. And if schools could just realize how many good things can come from free textbooks, we'd all be better off. We need to push for schools to adopt a system where that's possible. We need to do research, make a stand, join groups, and make proposals to fix this expensive textbook hardship.